Hi all, Rick here, and I thought I'd do a video covering the lore of the Metrons as they appeared in Star Trek and Strange New Worlds. Spoilers ahead for Series 3. With very little to go on from the shows, however, I will be making extensive use of apocrypha such as the Star Trek comics, including the Q War. The Metrons were among the earliest life forms created by the ancient humanoids that first seeded life in the Milky Way galaxy alongside the Organians. This suggests that, back in their evolutionary past, the Metrons were likely physical. If we take the references of Organia's move to non-corporeal bodies, then that occurred 22 million years ago. The two powers of Organia and the Metron Consortium were initially combative with one another before reaching a peace agreement and later developing ties to one another. Growing as allied powers, the two species adopted similar views on the life that would come to flourish after them, in that it was better to observe and study rather than directly influence events, at least where possible. With both the Metrons and Organians, it's interesting to consider that there is an entire series of cultures out there in the Star Trek galaxy of higher dimensional beings, or at least higher existence. The species that evolved millions of years before humans, Klingons, Vulcans and so on, that have formed their own alliances, have their own political ties, and have a very different view of those below them. While not as on the same spectrum of powers as the Q Continuum, who describes them as slightly more advanced, these non-corporeal species seem to be at this meeting point between the physical humanoids and the practically godlike Q. The Metrons are indeed powerful, but are close enough to the UFP to occasionally be affected or wish to interact with their affairs. Both Metrons and Organians keep tabs on their neighbouring powers, despite the disparity in power, because unlike the Q, they are still affected by the moves and machinations of the less potent aliens around them. Whether from self-interest, curiosity, or a duty of care, these non-corporeal aliens are interested in the development of others. There was a mandate among the Organians to honour the legacy of the ancient humanoids, to protect and encourage future lifeforms to follow their own paths. However, this view has been in contention at various points. The decision was made that they should minimise their impact on others in a sort of prime directive of their own. So for the most part, they would evade detection and merely observe events as they unfolded, learning through this process of study. Similarly, the Metrons chose to engage in a more hands-off approach to the other powers that followed them. The Metrons, however, would go on to not only engage in passive observation, but engineer situations to construct experiments as one would set up a laboratory condition, while then remaining apart so as not to contaminate the results. Their motivation for undertaking these experiments is unknown, but curiosity and exploration have been cited as reasons. It could be that they are looking to explore their own corporeal past through the lens of others, and their most recent exploits were centred around deducing if Starfleet and the Gorn could peacefully coexist. Both the Organians and Metrons would occasionally reach out and break their general distance. Notably, the Metrons would often conduct the aforementioned experiments, while the Organians preferred to observe at a ground level, and sometimes this brought them into contact with their subjects. In these instances, the Metrons would balance revealing their objective against concealing it and removing the memories of the encounter. Interestingly, when each species chose to reveal itself to the United Federation of Planets, it was to enforce a peace of sorts. The Organians, of course, enforced a ceasefire between the Klingon Empire and UFP in 2267, and the Metrons forced a one-on-one deathmatch between Kirk and the Gorn, rather than allow the conflict and pursuit to continue. When Kirk spared the Gorn captain, however, the Metrons simply sent each ship away from their territory and prevented another escalation. In the past too, both powers have been approached or been approached by others. Notably, the Tukon Empire is said to have attempted to form an alliance with them, only to be rebuffed, and the Tukon Empire was at the level of power that could technologically shift solar systems. While on the other end of the spectrum, the Metrons in particular are aware of the Q Continuum, and, according to a recent series of comics, they may have even attempted to contend with them. For their part, the Continuum viewed beings like the Organians as idealistic upstarts, and the Metrons as getting too big for their boots. Every few millennia, the Continuum would engage in a conflict against such non-corporeal species to reaffirm their position as the supreme power of the universe, and so far, their crown remains unclaimed. But it goes to show the level of interactions and considerations that beings like the Metrons have to contend with, and the field they're playing on. The Metrons in particular seem to adhere to their own claimed area of space. Whether a physical limitation or a self-imposed one is unknown, as is quite how they achieved their level of advancement, although it seems more of a technological acquisition combined with evolution. They have been shown to be capable of warping space-time to teleport others around at whim, up to the scale of entire starships. They can selectively halt or slow the flow of time, and can communicate both verbally and telepathically, but they seem unable to read minds, but can alter memories. They can assume a physical form at whim to facilitate communication, and do not require any form of atmosphere to survive. They can generate wormholes and other such phenomena, and materialize technology of their own design. It seems likely that they can create and terraform planets and planetoids to suit their needs. So essentially, they can manipulate space-time on a massive scale, but seemingly have their limitations, or at least we've seen no evidence of things like time travel, overt psionic power, or spontaneously altering reality on a massive scale, as a Q can. What I think I like most about the existence of things like the Metrons is the connected nature of similarly powerful beings out there, as well as this vast arena of species who are brushing up against this higher level of existence. The Prophets, the Travellers, Organians, Ancient Humanoids, the Nascene, and many others. It paints the idea that beyond the existence of all our Star Trek heroes, there's a whole nother realm of struggles and balances that exists, and it's on this level that Q put to Picard as the next trial of humankind. Thanks for watching this lore ramble fueled thing I made on the internet. I've been Rick, and until the next one, goodbye.